Okay. Start recording. So we said it was choosing here and we get go So all people show up, it's right? Yeah. The main 3,000 years long. Oh, no, but it's going to be, I think, that we, you know, I, at least when we talk, yeah, this one's big. Mother house is should I shift? Okay. Yeah.
Make it go this way. Because they're not working. And she's and she's called Joey. He's coming over. It's fine.
Good evening. We'd like to offer a special welcome to all of the members of Sister Anne's family who could be with us tonight and tomorrow. Let us pray. O God, we gather in your presence, in the depth of the mystery that is you, to remember Sister Anne and to ponder once again the endless cycle of birth and death. We give you thanks for her presence among us and for the life of service that she lived. Welcome her now into the fullness of your presence. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. And now we will have Eleanor Craig to present Sister Anne's biography.
I get to read the remembrance of the life of Sister Anne White, who lived from November 11th, 1925 to February 16th, 2014. Louder. Born in Louisville, Kentucky to Leo James and Mary Sonnefeld White, the daughter who would become Sister Anne White was baptized Mary Inez. In an autobiographical sketch written in the late 1980s, Anne called herself a first-generation Kentuckian, since my parents were transferred to Louisville from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Little Inez began elementary school at St. Vincent de Paul Parish, but moved with her family after just 1 month to Louisville's West End, where she was enrolled at Christ the King School, even though her family lived outside the parish bounds. Following grade school, Inez earned a scholarship to Loretto High School, and then another to the Sisters of Charity, Nazareth College, now Catherine Spaulding. After just 1 year of college, she asked to be admitted to the Sisters of Loretto. In a September 1944 note to Reverend Mother Eduarda, written in the neat script that characterized all her later correspondence, Inez said, "I can't tell you how happy I am that soon, with God's grace, I will be able to go to Loretto. April 25th, 1945, Inez received the habit of a Loretto novice and the name Sister Ann Richard, by which she would be known for more than 20 years. In the late 1960s, she became simply Sister Ann White. After first vows in April 1947, Anne was missioned to St. Pius V School in St. Louis, teaching first grade and working on her college degree on weekends at Webster College. She graduated from Webster with a major in French in August 1953 and was missioned to Bishop Tulane High School in Mobile, where she taught French, religion, and English for 3 years. In September 1957, Anne was asked to do graduate studies in theology because Catholic universities in the United States would not admit women to full-time graduate study of theology. Anne, together with Mary Frances Lottis, traveled to Rome to study at Regina Mundi, a graduate school of theology specifically established for women. Anne later wrote, quote, "During 3 years' stay in Rome, we had many opportunities for sightseeing in Rome and travel in Western Europe. We spent one summer at Oxford, using the Bodleian Library, and another at Louvain, where we did a lot of research on Father Nerinx. Visiting the places important in his life and talking with his relatives. We were able to get microfilm of much of Father Nerinx's correspondence," end quote. June 1960, Anne was awarded the degree of Magisterium in Scientis Sacris, the equivalent of a doctorate in theology. Following summer travels in the Mideast and Egypt, Anne returned to the States to teach theology at the Mother House Novitiate. While Anne and Mary Fran were in Rome, Pope John XXIII was elected and a year later called for a Second Vatican Council. In 1965, Anne returned to Rome with Sister Mary Luke Tobin to attend the 4th session of the council. She spoke later about the outstanding experiences of meeting great theologians and being included in all the activities with the Protestant observers. And she wrote, quote, "During this period, I used to dress in a black suit and a light blue suit. I wore a short veil and appeared frequently during the bishop's coffee breaks so that the bishops might see what the new nun would look like. I had to be very careful to avoid the press on these sorties because Newsweek and Times were eager for pictures of the new nun. I wore the suit and veil with Luke to visit Cardinal Antonucci of the Sacred Congregation of Religion, who asked for photos." In 1963, Anne joined the religion department at Webster College, and 2 years later was appointed chair. Following her return from Vatican II, she wrote, "We made the religion department very alive with the teachings of Vatican II. We even had classes for large numbers of adults who were eager to learn more about Vatican II and how it could affect and even change their lives. These were wonderfully alive times. Anne taught theology at Webster until 1980, during which time she had many opportunities to travel, to work, and to study with Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish scholars. In the 1970s, she traveled to the Holy Land on behalf of a Jewish group working for the release of Soviet Jews. In her autobiographical notes, Anne wrote, "My precious mother died suddenly in 1971. Between the time of her death and 1980, I spent all holidays with my darling father, times very precious for both of us." Anne's international experience and language expertise led in 1980 to her appointment as director of Webster University in Geneva, Switzerland, where she presided over a six-fold growth in enrollment, with students attending from 120 countries. Following 6 years at Webster in Geneva, Anne served as administrative director of the Art Center, College of Design, also in Switzerland, and then as dean for Schiller International University in Strasbourg, France. Anne returned to the United States in 1992. She served as executive director for the National Association of Church Personnel Administrators, then as administrator of the Mother House for the Dominican Sisters of St. Catherine in Springfield, Kentucky. In 2001, Anne embarked on one final sabbatical, studying for a year at Berea College. She returned to Loretto Mother House, where she taught exercise and shared her lifelong love of dance. Annie Stevens remembers, quote, "Anne and Luke loved to dance. In the summer of 2004 at the Mother House, Luke taught a basic ballet class for the 7 of us in the novitiate. Luke explained the foot positions and demonstrated with music, and we followed as best we could." Anne White retired to the Mother House Infirmary in 2005. She died peacefully on Sunday night, February 16th, 2014.
Remembering Anne's joyful celebration and love of dance, let us respond in the words of Psalm 149.
A reading from Jeremiah the prophet. For thus says the Lord, shout with joy for Jacob, exult at the head of the nations. Proclaim your praise and say, the Lord has delivered his people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them back from the land of the north. I will gather them from the ends of the world, with the blind and the lame in their midst, the mothers and those with child. They shall return as an immense throng. They departed in tears, but I will console them and guide them. I will lead them to brooks of water on a level road, so that none shall stumble. Then the virgins shall make merry and dance, and young men and old as well. I will turn their mourning into joy. I will console and gladden them after their sorrows. And my people shall be filled with my blessings, says the Lord.
The beauty of the sky, the awesomeness of space. The sun, the moon, the stars, all speak of you, God. The sounds of nature, the rumbling of thunder, the howling wind, the raging waters, the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze, the cracking of ice on the trees, all speak of you, God. The strong love of a father, the gentle caring of a mother, the happy chatter of children, the laughter of happy friends, people loving and caring for each other, all speak of you, God. The sound of the trumpet, the peal of the organ, the multi-sounds of the orchestra, the enlivening spirit of the band, the beauty of human voices blended in song, all speak of you, God. Let us pray. God of all mercy, you have shown Anne the path of life, the fullness of joy in your presence, and happiness in your embrace forever. As you welcome her into the fullness of your life, comfort those who will miss her, comfort all who will suffer, and fill each of us worthy with your own life. We ask this in Jesus' name.
And
this time it is our tradition to have some time for sharing of memories and stories. We should have another microphone available that we'll bring down that will enable everyone to hear the stories.
We'll begin with sharing here at the Mother House, and then since we're connected to other places in the community, there may be others who wish to share with us. So who would like to start this evening? We just ask that you give your name when you start.
I'm Dave. I'm Inie's, or Sister Ann's, baby brother. And I was her baby brother until I was a very old age. And I just want to say that unfortunately, my older brother, Dick, they tried real hard to make it today. They had one plane that was going to arrive in Louisville at 11 o'clock, and they canceled that because of weather. They got on another plane that was supposed to be in at 2 o'clock, and they canceled that. And they finally got on a plane that was supposed to be in here at 9:30, and they canceled that. So they finally said, well, we might be able to get you to Washington and be here at 11:30. So with that, they just gave up. So unfortunately, my brother tried hard, gets an A for effort. So, but Inie, as I said, always called me baby brother, and probably rightly so, because my mother, when I was young, was very crippled up with arthritis. So Inie's job was to chase after me, and I did my best to make sure she got exercise. Maybe that's where she got our dancing. I don't know. But anyway, my brother and I, we've had a lot of fun with Inie, and we've been very fortunate. We've gone on a lot of trips with her. One of the trips, we met her when she was in Strasbourg, and we took we drove all through Alsace and Lorraine on a wine tasting tour. And that was a beautiful country and even better wine. We also, my brother and I, we arranged to have a trip for Ireland. So I think we called Inie and said, why don't you meet us in Ireland? And that was when she was in Switzerland. And so sure enough, she met us in Ireland. And we had a great time. Our first place we stayed was a very quaint Irish cottage, had a thatched roof, had sheep in the front yard, typical Irish. And then we stayed in a castle that they converted into a hotel, ended up in bed and breakfasts. But we enjoyed our trip of Ireland. But probably the highlight of our tours was in 2000, the Jubilee year. My wife saw an article in our Archdiocese paper saying they were looking for American volunteers. And so she said to me as we were going to work, don't you think that'd be fun? And of course I said, no. But the next day she brought it up again. I said, you're really serious about it. And she was. And so we volunteered for 3 weeks in Rome during the Jubilee year. So I called my brother because, as I said, we had been going on some trips almost every year. And so I told him, guess what? We're going to Rome. And he says, oh, that sounds interesting after we explained it. So he volunteered for 3 weeks. So then in our telephone conversation, I said, we're we're going to Rome and none of us speak the language. Maybe we ought to take Ines with us. So, or Sister Ann. But anyway, sure enough, she joined us in Rome, and it was wonderful. She knew a lot about Rome, which was, we had our own tour guide, but they also stationed us at all the major basilicas in Rome, and we were sort of a guide, lecturer, answer question type thing. And the Italians didn't really quite know what to do with Americans because we only spoke English. But it turned out very well because there were just people from all over the world. Japan, Australia, Ireland, of course, from all over the world, England even. And I can tell you a story about that. But anyway, none of them spoke Italian, but almost all of them spoke English. So we were pretty good guys, we think. In fact, one Englishman came up to me and he says, "Do you speak English?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I speak American." He goes, "Well, I'll try to understand you." But we've had a lot of fun, and Ine was a big help to all of us. And I think if you listen to her biography, she was busy as all get out. She worked hard. She did things that surprised me most of the time. And I think she was always trying to help people live a better life. And I think she did. So.
I got to live with Ann at the Lacey House, which was right across Big Bend, right behind Webster. And I wanted to live there so I could go to the Hilton. But it was a marvelous community. There were 7 of us, and it was like a beehive. Everybody was important. And I think Ann was particularly, she had a routine. She'd come home from school, change her clothes, and sit down in her favorite chair with a can of beer. And then she would prepare for the next day. And but then she knew these jokes that were just a little sarcastic. And they would, I would sit there and I couldn't help but laugh because she would catch me off guard every time. On her door, she had a sign, "Margaret Mead slept here." She loved teaching. She prepared every day. But she came home one day just kind of baffled because her assignment was that night they were to read the book of Genesis. And afterwards, a student came up and said, "I don't know where to find that book." So she had her work cut out for her. But Webster really owes her a lot. When you think what she did in Europe, she just, with her French, off she went. And she did the marketing, she did the choice of spots, she did it's unbelievable how much she achieved. And she got the other countries going and the Japanese, and she would come back and she was a happy woman. But she never wanted anybody to know what her age was. And she, that was her secret. But Webster owes a lot to her. We all do. And when she came down here, she knew what was happening to her. And so she got a hold of a book and read it, so she would know ahead of time what she was facing. Good woman, good woman. And I feel very fortunate to have lived in that little beehive. There were 7 of us.
Well, I have two little things. You know, look at that red hair. How many people at 88 have red hair? We always teased her that she dyed it, but I know she didn't. And the other thing about, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm Inez. I'm Dave's wife, or Ines. And I'm going to tell you a little something about that. But I wanted to go back to the French. She said she felt like she had really arrived because she was dreaming in French. And so that was kind of neat. But anyway, as you know, her given name was Mary Inez, and my name is Inez. As she was named after her aunt, and actually the family called it Ines because they're from the north, and so that's Inez is pronounced Ines, kind of up north. And so she was named after her aunt, Ines. I was named after my aunt, who was a Sister of Providence, Sister Ines. And so, you know, that's kind of complicated to have four people with the same name in a family. So how they solved that was their aunt was Big Ines, she was Little Ines, I was Dave's Ines, and my aunt was Sister Ines. And so we were not only sister-in-laws with the same name, but we were great friends. And I miss her. Thank you.
I'm Carol Dunphy, and probably 20 years ago or so, we belonged to the same community group in Denver, and we met in Taos, New Mexico, and in the old convent there, which had a large meeting room, and Anne was sitting on the edge of a couch, talking, telling something, and very seriously, and the rest of us were sitting there watching when the big dog decided it was time to get up on his bed, her bed, I mean, and so here she is, nuzzling Anne while she's talking, and Anne was oblivious of it. And pretty soon, the dog almost had her off the couch until she finally saw what was happening, but the rest of us were collapsed.
Hello, I'm Rosemary Stevens Nielsen. Sister Ann knew me when I was Rosemary Stevens. That was 1957. She taught me French. A little bit for the camera. Is it okay? Okay. She taught me French, and over the years, I knew her what I call across the room. You know, and there are a lot of us gathering in one place. Sometimes you only can do that much because there's so many people. So that's how I've known her. And I would like to say that she is one of the most gentle, kind, and beautiful woman I've ever known.
I'm Sandy Arduino. I knew Ann when we were in the novitiate. The underground was wrought with information that we were getting someone new in the novitiate to look after us. We didn't think we needed looking after, but anyway, Anne was the one that was picked to come, and she came over from Europe, and we had never met her before, most of us. Okay, thank you. And so one night I was in charge of making the coffee for the plantation, and so I had gotten up in the middle of the night thinking that I hadn't done it correctly. It has little tubes on the side and you were supposed to fill them, and I wasn't sure if I had done it or not, so I kind of snuck downstairs to check it out. And luckily I had done it, so I didn't have to leave the light on too long, and I was sneaking back upstairs and trying to be as quiet. I didn't want to wake up anybody. Really, I didn't want them to think I was a fool that I'd let the coffee urns go. But when I was climbing the last set of steps, this head comes over the banister, and back then we had nightcaps, and red hair was kind of hanging out of it. And I thought I was going to scream out loud, and I caught myself in time, and she was going to scream too, because she was as scared as I was. But as it turned out, we both quieted each other down, and she said, "Go to bed." And of course I went. I don't know if you know that she's extraordinarily good at catching bats. When we were in the novitiate, we also had bats that got into the novitiate building, and Anne would get a shoebox and climb a ladder and put the shoebox on top of the bat and bring it back down the wall and take it outside and let it go. She was gentle even with bats. Thank you.
My name is Carol Colligan, and I was a student of Anne's. She was my department chair at Webster. She was my advisor for 4 years. She became a very dear friend, and she was remarkably talented. She was funny. She just thought nothing of breaking into dance. And she was very graceful, and I was a total clod. But I loved watching her dance. And I do remember one time someone cut us off as we were coming out of the chapel at Webster College. And Anne you could tell she was really angry, and she said, "Oh, that horse." And so she spent many times with my parents and me, and she was a great gift to my life. So on behalf of the Colligan family, I thank the White family for Anne Loretto for sharing her. Thank you.
Anne and I were assigned to go to Rome together. And so we lived together. So Anne and I lived together for 3 years in Rome. And her French was wonderful. So we would have time to travel during vacation time, and Anne would decide where we go, and then she'd say, okay, she'd make all the arrangements. French was the international language. She could call anybody and make all the arrangements in French, and then we got it, and we went and had a wonderful time traveling all over all over the continent and even into Palestine and just everywhere. So all of that was in addition to getting our master's degrees in theology. So she was wonderful to live with, to work with, just to enjoy.
You spend a lot of time talking and visiting with her here. Tell her, you spend a lot of time visiting with her here.
When she was confined in her illness, I would go every day and visit her. And we would I could always say, Anne, remember when? And of course she'd say yes. And we relived a lot of the days and experiences that we had had. But she was such an asset with her gifts, her simplicity, her cheerfulness, just, I don't know, comes close to being a kind of a saint, I think.
Joy Garrity. Mary Fred, I wanted to talk to you about when Anne came back from Europe, and we were in group number 3 in Taos, and she joined the group because you were in Santa Fe at the time, and the two of you were such great friends that she wanted the opportunity to be with you. And through the time that we were in group 3 together, all of us, a big group of people, you gave us so much fun and so much laughter to see what good, great friends could be like. Thank you.
Lois Dunphy. Anne was here at the Mother House when I came in 2003. And no, I don't think she was here yet, but she lived in Louisville, I think, by then. But anyway, after she came here, we were doing little odd jobs. And one of the jobs that she had picked up ahead of me was sweeping the courtyard. And so when I came, I needed something to do. So someone said, well, why don't you help Anne out at the courtyard? So we would go out every day after breakfast and sweep the courtyard out there. And we'd always take a coffee break at 10 o'clock. And then if we didn't finish, we'd go on and do the rest of it. But I enjoyed doing that. It gave me something to do that was something I knew how to do and wasn't too hard. But it was she who introduced me to that. And then at another time, well, we did travel to Colorado, or to Santa Fe first, and then Colorado for meetings. And one time she and I went to Bellevue, Illinois to a meeting, and we just had a good time doing all these things together. So I appreciate Anne a lot.
I'm Cecily at the Mother House. Anne, in her memoirs, was quoted in the biography referring to her time going to the Vatican Council with Luke. And I wanted to add a couple of literary references to that, because Anne was not only Luke's companion, but she is cited in 2 different places in writing about the council. One of the Protestant auditors, they were called observers, Robert McAfee Brown, a Presbyterian theologian with whom Luke became quite friendly at the council and then later did some peace work with him. After the council, he wrote a very charming, humorous, long poem in the style of Ogden Nash, which I don't fully at all remember, except it was about how Luke, in her very affable way, really was quite a match for the bishops. But when he introduces the poem, he says, "When Sister Mary Luke and Sister Ann Richard invaded the council." I thought that was quite a tribute to her. The other reference is from Carmel McElroy's book called Guests in Their Own House, and it's a book devoted to the women auditors at the council. And when Carmel is referring to, in different places, to Luke, she also mentions, especially in one place, the fact that Sister Ann Richard was with her. She doesn't call her by name, but she uses this very interesting verb. She's talking about Luke's work on the habit. And she says, "Sister Mary Luke quite ingeniously smuggled into St. Peter's a very attractive young nun with whom she wanted to convince one of the cardinals about the style of an alternative habit." So Ann Richard was smuggled into the Vatican.
My name is Melissa Gunter, and I am, Sister Ann is my aunt. I'm her niece, Dave and Inez's daughter. And the fondest memories I have of Aunt Inez are 30 years ago this summer, a girlfriend and I went to Geneva, Switzerland, and stayed with her. And as I was trying to prepare something to talk about today, I called my friend Tracy, who I haven't talked to in more than a year, which is terrible, but thank you. I did call her. And we had great memories and talked about lots of different things. And we discussed the fact that it had to have been a little bit scary for her to open her home up to two 20-year-old young women, one of whom she'd never met before, and it wasn't for a week, but we stayed 10 weeks with her that summer. And we took classes at Webster 2 days a week, and then we traveled the rest. We had our Eurail passes, and she would help us plan where our next event was or where we were going. Some of the things we talked about were she would take us to dinner and show us Geneva. She had a Jane Fonda workout exercise tape that the three of us do together at night. We remembered seeing her sit in her chair in the evenings with her Bible in her lap and a Heineken beer sitting next to her on the table, and she would doze off. That must be a hereditary thing. She spoke French, as we all talked about, most of the day at work, and Tracy and I both talked about, she would come home with stories, and she would forget the English words in the middle of the story. They would come to her in French, and so she'd have to rethink how to tell the story. Finally, we both laughed about how back then there were no cell phones, and so we would have to schedule to call our boyfriends back here in the United States ahead, and so she would get as excited as we were to make sure we were where we were supposed to be at the right time, and we'd have to get an international operator to make those calls, and that was a big for all three of us. It was pretty exciting. We discussed, Tracy and I went back and thought again, at that point, we didn't realize what a wonderful person as far as her professional life. To me, she was Aunt Ines, and that's who I knew her as. But as we talked about it, it's amazing. She took off on her own to Geneva to work on this college that was very young. And I looked it up on the internet, and the college is still there. When I was there, it was a one-room, huge villa, but it was beautiful, very small, students from all over the world. That villa is still there, and I think it's the administration building. But it currently has over 600 students, and it's the largest Webster University outside of the United States. When you met Aunt Ines, she didn't give off an air of power or to be a powerful person. However, when you think of her successes, she obviously was. God gave her a peacefulness that helped her to get done what she needed to get done when she needed to get it done. She was a wonderful role model, both professionally and personally. I'm going to miss her.
I maybe need to wait a minute. My name's Regina. I'm Dave's oldest daughter, and Ines is my aunt. And my earliest recollections, because I'm the oldest, the earliest things I remember about Aunt Ines was that she wasn't there because she was being a nun, you know. So my grandmother had a picture of her meeting the Pope during the Second Vatican Council. And I remember always looking at that picture because Mimi would always say, you know, and there's your Aunt Ines, you know. So there's Sister Ann. She called her Sister Ann. There's Sister Ann. But in years later, when I would look at that picture, and I would see how young she was in that picture, very young. And I didn't know she was modeling outfits, okay? I learned that today, all right? But that makes sense because she always has had a style about her, very precise. She was a woman ahead of her time, always. She looked after her body. I was going to use the word athletic. She was athletic. She, you know, valued taking care of her body as a temple for God. And, you know, it's just amazing the changes that she experienced as a woman. I'm in my late 50s, and I know my daughter doesn't appreciate how much change that I have experienced to become a woman in the world. But to think of the 88 years that Aunt Ines saw, and she was a part of it. She was making it happen. She was modeling outfits. She, you know, I mean, it's just incredible to me. So as a role model, from just being the wonderful woman that she was, it's just amazing to me. But the most interesting thing is that I knew that she was very independent, but she was always valued her time with her community, you all. When she was with us, she was there, she was present for us. She knew half the time what was going on in our lives. I don't know how, you know, she'd come in from out of town and she'd already know probably Mom was doing a good job feeding her what was going on. But when you talked with her, she knew you. It might be 3 years, 4 years, but she knew you. She was part of you. She was present for you at that time. And I just really valued that. And in my mind, I knew that I would always have time to sit down and hear these stories, that she would write a book about these adventures that she had. And I'm glad that somebody's written those down. I hope we get a copy of it. Because I think my greatest sorrow is that for the last 10 years, her conversations have been with God. You know, he got a private view of what's been going on in her head for a long time. And of course, that's the way she'd want it. But I really do that. I'm glad that she can be free and do what she needs to do to dance and what she prepared herself to do. I'm just sorry that I didn't get to hear a little bit of it at the end. But anyway, I'm going to miss her too.
If there's no one else, then we'll take a moment to switch over so that we can hear people from our other parts of the country. Okay, Nicole, we're ready.
I'm Barbara Ann Barbado. I don't know if you can hear me or not. I lived with Ann in Mobile when she was the assistant principal of the high school. She taught first grade for 3 years and then went to Mobile and was assistant principal of a high school. She was an enormous help to Sister Matthew Marie Grennan because somewhere along the line, Sister Matthew Marie, who was not too, she had some mobility problems already, but she fell and she broke either her leg or her hip. I don't remember which. And so her mobility in the high school was very much impaired, but so was her stamina, you know, and Ann picked up the pieces and went forward, and it was as smooth as anything, and nobody ever really paid much attention that it wasn't Matthew Marie all the time around. Matthew Marie seemed to be quite comfortable about the whole thing. I also lived with her at the Lacey House, and I was there when Margaret Mead came, and she gave some lectures at the college and visited with students in classrooms, and was at our house, the Lacey House, talking with students, a smaller group. And when it was time for those students to go off to class, Ann turned to Margaret Mead and said, "Now, what would you like to do before dinner? You know, you have some free time." And Margaret Mead said, "I would like to take a nap." And so Ann said, "Well, that's very possible." And so she took Margaret Mead into her room. She gave her one of the nightgowns, you know, those long, big white nightgowns that we had in those days. Margaret Mead put on the nightgown, crawled into bed, and took a nap. Then I lived with Ann in Geneva. And she was everything that her nieces said for me. I taught classes in Geneva, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but traveled the rest of the time. And Ann always helped me learn what to do to go many places. I went to Rome, and I went to with a senior student who had also come to Geneva. The two of us traveled together. We went to the Netherlands. We went to Florence. And Ann really made those things very easily done and showed us how to make connections and what to take with us and that sort of thing. But the best part was the musical concerts that Ann and I attended when I was in Geneva. A world-famous pianist, for example, and the time spent after in the little church that we went to Mass, where it was a very small church, and where the priest would turn on the recorder for music, so that we could sing with the organ and the little choir that was singing on a tape, I don't know whether, yeah, it was a tape in those days, but not the kind we have now. And the other thing I remember from that time that Ann and I did were going shopping in Geneva, and it was a whole new experience for me. The kind of grocery stores and the way you bought things, and it was when I later on went to an Aldi's in the United States, or a Shop and Save, I realized where they probably got the idea. And I learned so much from Ann. I learned how to take care of a poinsettia when you cut it as a garden flower and put it on the altar in a vase, like cut flowers, and it didn't bleed, you know, in that milky white sap. I learned from Ann how to be a lot calmer. You can imagine what I was before I learned what I learned from Ann. And she was always very encouraging for Lucy Ruth and I when we moved from the Lacey house to an apartment, and would always, you know, check in to see whether or not we needed anything or anything of that sort, in a very kind of indirect way that was Ann. But the last story I want to tell you is that we were in the Lacey house not very long when the college went from being in loco parentis. And so that first freshman class that came, where the college, where the students were going to be on their own and the college was not going to be their parents, we had some parents that were very concerned and were asking all over the college. They needed to talk to somebody about this. And so they sent them over to the Lacey house, to the good nuns. And Ann became a model dean of students of the old time. And she reassured the parents that all would be well, and that really her daughter, their children really probably were much more capable than they evidenced at home. And really, it was a marvelous thing to watch as we sat in the living room with these very concerned parents. And I watched Ann calm their fears and get them to feeling, well, all right, this will be fine. And indeed, most of it was.
Annie Stevens, and I will vouch for the fact that Ann was indeed a beautiful dance instructor to us clodhoppers that summer in 2004. And I also just wanted to say that that was the summer that my 84-year-old father came down from Maine, having never a dream that his Protestant-raised daughter would ever become a Catholic nun, and he was rather skeptical about these people. But for 3 days, he got acquainted, and particularly, he loved to tell stories. And Ann was a wonderful listener, and he just fell in love. And so he left totally aware that, you know, this was going to be okay. He said to me, well, now you've got a lot of good sisters, especially that red-headed one.
I'm unmuted, so can anybody hear me? Yeah? Okay. I just wanted to make a comment that kind of tags along Annie's comment about clodhoppers. Oh, I'm Liz Dinas, before I forget to do that, in El Paso. And I was part of the 2004 summer adventure. We, you know, went through you have to understand, this is coming from a person whose nickname as a child was Queen Klutz. As we were dancing, you know, I kind of felt like, you know, a beached whale or something. And Ann very sweetly, you know, kind of pulled me aside and told me, oh, you're so graceful. That was really nice. Have you ever thought of taking up dance? And I was just looking at her thinking, oh my, thank you so much. just so kind and so considerate and very, very loving and very gentle. And, you know, just the dance, her fluidity, and I just remember seeing her with the skirts, with the long skirts, and just everything was flowing, and it was so beautiful. And for her not to say, "You clodhopper, why don't you sit down?" You know, and just say that, you know, have I ever thought of actually doing something like this, was just like really, really sweet of her. And she will be very, very much missed.
Mother House?
We'll close with My Soul Give Thanks. My soul give thanks to the Lord, and all my needs let us sing. My soul give thanks to the Lord, and never forget my soul. Thank you so much.